There's a story. I read the story. I've heard the story about the story before, but I read it this week in one of the old writings, and historians was writing, and one of the early church fathers who was a disciple of the Apostle John was writing about John. And the story goes something like this. I'll paraphrase it for sake of time. But the Apostle John, now he's old. Everybody else, all his friends got martyred. But John lived into an old age. And so at some time in his old age, he was living in Ephesus. This is where he was living after he wrote the Gospel of John and the book of, I believe he's the writer of the book of Revelation too. That after he wrote that, he's living in Ephesus, and he's an overseer there. But he travels off and he goes to a church somewhere, and he sees this young man. And he sees something in that young man. And he calls him out. He lays his hands on this young man. The Apostle John begins to pray over his future and begins to prophesy over his future that he'll be a leader in that church in that city. Well, John left, sealing the young man with the Holy Spirit. But this young man, he was running with the wrong crowd. And he got caught up in a band of robbers. And he did a lot of things, robbing people, hurting people, even into the place of I believe, probably even murdering people. And they were living, now he's become, this young man that was anointed by the Apostle John, has become the leader of this band of robbers, and they're living up in the mountain. Well, when John came back to visit the church, the overseer there told him, remember that young man, this is what he's doing. Immediately, the Apostle John said, get me a horse. And he rode that horse up into the mountains with hopes that the band of robbers would take him and take him captive so that he would have an audience with their captain. And he got into the mountain, and what he desired happened. They took him captive. And he said, for this purpose I came and I rode to this mountain so that I would have an audience with your leader. Watch this. He gets in the presence of this young man now who's become this leader of this band of robbers, and he begins to tell him, this is not who you are. He begins to minister to this young man to the point to where it says that this young man was baptized again, but this time in his own tears. And John the apostle brings the young man back to him and restores him back to the church where he had called him, where he had chosen him. Now think about this, and think about what Jesus said when he said, what kind of shepherd wouldn't leave the 99 to go save the one? The Apostle John in his old age says, get me a horse. This isn't the end of this young man's life. You know what that is? It's redeeming love. John didn't say, just let it, then fine, forget him. No, he remembered what he's spoken over the young man, and he felt responsible. And he went after him. This is the love of God that redeems, brings redemption. And what Jesus did for the world on the cross is to continue to do for the world that he died for. Is everybody here? That's radical love. That brings about radical generosity, the giving of ourselves.